26 through 27. And here is what the Word of God says. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. My title for these next couple of moments is The God Who Sees. The God Who Sees. We are at the third word. And Jesus has been stripped of his tunic, and his clothes have been divided amongst those whom were in charge of him, which is the fulfillment of prophecy. Jesus hangs on the cross like a low-down, half-naked criminal, and he is surrounded by criminals and surrounded by government officials and surrounded by people he healed and possibly forgave. And within his view, there's Mom. And she's there doing what mothers do, by being there for her adult child who happens to also be God. Jesus sees his mother standing there and knows that her whole life has revolved around taking care of him and looking after him and following him and believing him. And she stares, speechless, with tears rolling down her face, knowing there's nothing that she can do about what's happening right now. It doesn't matter that she was told that a sword would pierce her soul. No amount of warning could have prepared her for this reality. Jesus is out of her hands now, and his absence creates a vacancy in her own life. What will she do now? Her son is dying before her eyes, and there's nothing she can do about it. If she could, she would take his place, because that's what mothers do. We sacrifice and go the distance in the most supernatural ways. You see, Mary didn't know anything about motherhood before, but with Jesus, she has embraced it. And anyone who is a mom and takes on the role of motherhood knows that moms are not just moms. We are alarm clocks and bathroom attendants. We are hairdressers and personal stylists. We are cooks and we are nannies. We are housekeepers, and that's all before we've gotten ourselves ready in the morning. We are physicians with no degree, but we mend hearts and bruise knees. We are lawyers that mediate between kids who cannot get along and adults who act like children. We are chefs who can pull together a meal with scraps in the refrigerator. We are accountants who can make money stretch when you don't even know how. We are strong because we hide the strengths that you don't think we go through. We are all these things that you don't see at night. We are prayer warriors praying over our house when everybody's asleep. We are the ones that keep the enemy at bay because we are the ones on our face. We are strong weapons that God has ordained for this position of motherhood. So for all of the women out there that believe being a mom is about looking cute, I want you to know that being a mother is a calling. And this is what Mary was called to do. And her identity is tied to this calling. You see, like many women who are mothers, sometimes our identities get wrapped up in the calling because our bodies are not just designed for pleasure, they are also designed for purpose. You see, during slavery, we nursed our own kids, but also the children of the master. Our wombs have carried political leaders and athletes. Our wombs have carried inventors and theologians. We've nurtured the ones who have made us proud, but also the ones that have broken our hearts. And then Mary received the highest honor of being the birth canal of Jesus Christ, the Messiah. This is why 1 Corinthians 11:12 says, "For as the woman originates from the man, so also the man has his birth through the woman. And all things originate from God." You see, James Brown even says this is a man's world. But it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl. Listen, saints of God, this is why there ought not be a battle of the sexes. There's no need for man versus woman, because the truth is we need each other. No man is sufficient on his own, but no woman is sufficient on her own. And when the man and the woman come together, Genesis says that that's the best reflection of God. Mary is called to be a mother, but you do know that there are some women who have no business being mothers. Oh yes, every woman is not called to motherhood. You see, there are broken men and broken women who still suffer the effects of being raised by a woman who resented motherhood. There are women who are selfish and self-centered. Yeah, I'm coming down our lane. There are women who don't care about the future of their children. Women who turn their kids into bodyguards that keep away anyone God could be sending to love and help them. There are women who leave their children with just anybody. Women who let their children do whatever and eat whatever and watch whatever. Some women force their kids to grow up sooner than they ought to, simply because they weren't ready to be a mom and did not have enough money or courage to get an abortion. But this is not Mary. Mary was young and inexperienced, but she accepted the call to motherhood, and she did it to the best of her ability. So here she stands at the foot of the cross watching her son die. And she gets it, but she doesn't get it. She's standing there looking like a shell of a person clothed on the outside, while her inside is as empty as the tomb that her son will lay in. And with everything going on with Jesus, he sees her. And I believe he sees her the same way that God saw Hagar. Sad, alone, desperate, helpless, and hopeless. You see, when we look at the life of Jesus in the Gospels, we see him render to Caesar what is Caesar's. We talk about the mansions that he's preparing. We know about the streets of gold. We know that he heals the sick, and we know that he raises the dead. We know he restores sight to the blind, and he turned water into wine. But what about the heart? What about love? What about companionship? What about loneliness? What about these basic human emotional needs that we all long for? Does God care about that too? Well, the text suggests that he does. And at a time where mental and emotional health is low, I still find myself drawn to a God that cares about my loneliness. You see, Jesus sees Mary and gives her companionship. She did so much for him and loved him so much. She still has more mothering left in her. And Jesus sees that. Which should be a reminder to those of you who might be retired or empty nesters that just because you're done with your primary responsibilities does not mean your work of mentoring or surrogate parenting is over. Jesus gives Mary to one of his disciples because God still cares about y'all being equally yoked. King Jesus came to the world to save the world and has all authority in his hands. And yet while he is paying the sin debt, he provides for his mother. He's not too busy. He's not too beaten and not too wounded, not too scarred and not too tired to care about Mary's loneliness. You see, usually human kings and self-professed saviors dream their dreams and build their empires and conquer the world while in the process losing sight of people, even the ones they love. But not Jesus. He's the God who sees. He sees Mary and he sees you. That's why the hymn writer says, why should I be discouraged? And why do the shadows come? Why does my heart feel lonely and long for heaven and home? For Jesus is my portion. A constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Is there anybody here that knows that God is watching you? You may not recognize it, but he is the God who sees. He sees you, and he sees your children, he sees your spouse, and he sees your heart. God is the great multitasker who can manage the world and take care of your heart. Mary was called to be a mother, and he honors her by continuing her assignment. He doesn't say, woman, behold John. He says, woman, behold your son. A mother she was, and a mother she will continue to be, because Jesus is the God who sees.